Welcome to 3 Steps to No More Meltdowns Masterclass. Stop the daily battles, the simple fix that finally brought calm to my neurodivergent home. And I promise you to give you my exact step-by-step framework to stop the daily battles before they spiral, so you can create the real calm at home and start enjoying parenting your neurodivergent child again. And this masterclass is for you if you feel like every day is just surviving another meltdown after meltdown, that you are constantly walking on eggshells, trying to put down the fires, and you just don't know what to do. And I know that you love your child deeply, but you are also exhausted and overwhelmed, and you tried all the typical parenting strategies, the sticker charts, rewards, stronger boundaries, and nothing works. And you are just wondering, is there something wrong with me? Is there something wrong with my child? And you are stuck in that cycle of concerning behaviors, feeling lost and alone. Hi, I'm Isabella Doyo, a neurodivergent family coach, mom of 2 neurodivergent teens, and a wife of autistic neurodivergent husband. So our household is very much neurodivergent, and I'm a founder of ADHD Pathfinder because I wanted to share the knowledge that it took me years to gather with other parents, so you don't have to waste time just like I did. And my top value is connection. And that's exactly what is at heart of my work with neurodivergent families. But before this, I was just another mom desperately trying to help my children. I had no parenting strategies because, just like you, I rely on rewards and punishments. Super Nanny was my hero, and those strategies failed me over and over again. I had no support, no confidence. To be honest, I had no clue, but I had the desire to be the best parent to my children. So I started and finished a psychology degree. Then I went towards ADHD coaching. And finally, I understood that actually I need something that is designed specifically for neurodivergent children. And I did a deep dive into different parenting strategies. And that's when I found Dr. Ross Green, the author of Explosive Child, and the collaborative and proactive solutions model. And I felt like I struck gold. This is exactly what I was looking for. This is exactly what I'm using with my family and exactly what I teach other families to use. And here's the truth, something that no one tells you, because we've been told and also we've been brought up on the belief that your child, when they're using behaviors, when they're misbehaving, when they're shouting, when they're swearing, when they're throwing the controller, when they're trying to hit you, that they are naughty, that they are limit testing, manipulative, lazy, or defiant. But I'm here to tell you none of this is truth. And their meltdowns are not random. They are signals. There are clues for us to look at, for us to solve. And when we do that, everything will change. And before we jump into the strategies, well, first the root causes and then strategies, we need to actually understand what happens and during concerning behaviors, and how our, as parents or educators, our reactions to those behaviors determine if our children get support they need and their behavior will improve or not. And you probably already heard of the terms of fight, flight, and freeze. So that's how some psychological theories describe behaviors. And those terms are helpful to describe what's happening to our children's nervous system, but actually doesn't help us understand what's happening to our children. So Dr. Ross Green describes concerning behaviors as lucky and unlucky behaviors. So lucky behaviors are whining, pounding, sulking, withdraw, crying, anxiety. And these behaviors are referred as lucky because those children are much more likely to receive support they need for the problem, the root cause of that behavior. If the child is crying, for example, or sulking, withdrawing, maybe some anxiety, we are more likely to come to that child and say, "Hey, honey, what's going on? Why are you crying?" And that child is much more likely to actually explain and say what's wrong and receive support for that problem. And then we have unlucky concerning behaviors. And those are those scary behaviors that we see in explosive children. So screaming, swearing, hitting, spitting, kicking, throwing, lying, stealing, the list go on. And those behaviors are unlucky because they are far less likely to elicit empathy, nurture, and support from caregivers. So when the child behaves this way, when they swear, when they throw things, our first instinct is to keep them at arm's length. Our instinct is to send them to the room. We say things like, "Well, talk to me when you come down. I won't speak to you when you're behaving this way. Speaking to me is disrespectful." Those children are far less likely to receive support for what actually caused their distress, that actually caused that behavior. So let me give you an example. I like to give a class example. Imagine there are three children sitting in a maths class in a primary school. They all get a maths worksheet to complete. The first child looks at the maths worksheets and realizes that they don't know what to do. So they put up their hand and the teacher comes and say, "What's wrong?" And they say, "Miss, I really don't want to what to do here. I'm stuck." The teacher will come and explain to the child what they need to do. This first child that put the hand up, they have the skills to express their problems and frustrations adaptively with words. They know what to do when they are stuck. The second child, the same worksheets, look at the piece of paper. Again, they're stuck. They don't know what to do. They start crying. The teacher sees the child crying, or maybe their peer says, "Miss, Johnny is crying." So the teacher will come, goes down to the child's level and say, "Johnny, why are you crying? What's wrong?" And Johnny will say, "Miss, I'm stupid. I don't know what to do here." And Johnny is much more likely to get the support for the work that they need to do. And then we have the third child. Again, the same worksheet. They're stuck. They don't know what to do. But they use unlucky behaviors. So they throw the worksheets in the air. They push the chair and kick the table and say, "Maths is stupid. You stupid." And the teacher says, "You go to the head teacher's office." And guess what? That child never receives support for the problem that they had with the maths worksheet. So when they come back tomorrow and they are faced with the same problem, again, they will display the same behavior. And again, day after day, then they will be labeled as difficult and naughty child. But nobody actually gets down to their level to check what are their difficulty in that moment. I think that paints a beautiful picture into how our response affects children and their future. Let's have a look at why daily meltdowns happen. What's going on? I'm going to tell you today that those meltdowns are not random, and they are definitely not about bad parenting or not about your child acting out or trying to get away with something or testing boundaries. The meltdowns, the behaviors, the explosions, they're actually patterns, predictable patterns. And once you see, you will never look at your child's behaviors in the same way. So here it is. Why those things happening? Your child has a delay in executive function skills. Okay, we know that with neurodivergence, there is at least 30% neurodevelopmental delay in executive function skills. Executive function skills are the skills that we need to start and complete any task, the simplest of tasks. Without them, children will struggle. And with neurodivergent brain, they do not learn executive function skills the same as their neurotypical friends. So they need actually hands-on support developing those executive function skills. Next, we have unsolved problems. Unsolved problems, those are the things, the exact root causes that our children have with our expectations. That's the secret formula. When you know what executive function skills your child's struggling with, when you know what the root causes of their behavior are, what tasks and activities, and when you know what your own expectations are, then you know exact time when those behaviors happen and you can do something about it. So let's look at them one by one. Reason number one is skills. And I like to divide executive function skills into two categories. So the one that are responsible for completing the tasks, and then the ones that are responsible for behavior. And the executive function skills that are responsible for tasks like organization, time management, persisting on challenging tasks, for example, those can be taught quite hands-on, just like you teach your child how to ride a bike or shoelaces. You can do body doubling, you can split the task into small chunks, you can draw their attention to passing time, and so on. But the skills that I want to talk to you about today are flexibility, adaptability, emotional regulation, problem solving, and frustration tolerance. So those are the executive function skills that your child needs to respond adaptively with words to problems and frustrations in those difficult moments. And the tricky part about those skills is that you cannot teach them directly. You cannot say to your child, hey, honey, this is how you need to be flexible. It just doesn't work. You need a different approach. And I'll be talking about that approach in the next part of this video. And actually, I wonder, feel free to comment under this video as well. Tell me what skills do you think your child struggle with, and I will give you a tip how you can help them with those skills either directly or support those skills indirectly. The reason number two that you're seeing those difficult behaviors, the meltdowns, is the problems. And those problems are the problems that our children face over and over again. So that means that their behaviors are predictable. And those problems are usually very specific, and they are linked to specific tasks, activities, transitions, other children that they have difficulty getting along in specific situation, anything that you have to remind your child of all the time, from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed, as well as their sensory needs. So when you actually identify what tasks, activities, transitions, children, sensory environments your child is struggling with, you will be able to predict really well when to expect those explosive behaviors. And the good thing about it is that if you know what the problem is, you can solve those problems. If you can't solve them right now, you can prevent them in some way. So now you know that those behaviors are not just one-offs, instances, they are patterns. And the reason number 3 is that power struggle, and that is linked to our own expectations. And that doesn't mean that we should not have expectations. The world is full of expectations. What that means is that when we have an expectation and our child has difficulty meeting that expectation. So, for example, you say to your child, "Hey, honey, it's time to brush your teeth." Every night when you say to your child, "Hey, honey, it's time to brush their teeth," they go into total meltdown, or they throw something, or they say no. You push harder, then your child really going to explode. And that means that in that moment, we do need to let go of our own expectation to stop that power struggle. And I'm not asking you to let go of your expectation forever. I'm just asking you to let go of the expectation in that moment for now, so you can actually solve that problem with your child. If you look at my little cycle of power struggle, and on the blue arrow, there is your expectation. So that's when you say to your child, "Honey, it's time to brush your teeth." And then we move to the green arrow, and maybe your child ignores you, or maybe they say no. And then you say, "Come on, it's bedtime. It's time to brush your teeth now." And maybe because, we parents, we tired, we really want to get on with it. We want to go to our own bed or have a little bit of a relaxing time. We say, "Hey, if you don't brush your teeth right now, tomorrow there will be no playtime with Freddy," for example. So we are using the rewards or punishments to incentivize the child. But those strategies don't work for our neurodivergent children because, as I said earlier, it's not the case of motivation, it's the case of skills and problems. So, what happens when we do that? Your child, pink arrow, explodes. And then there is nothing else for us to do but to de escalate the situation. So we might say, "Right, go to your room to calm down." Or maybe they're getting so aggressive that we have to actually hold them and wait for that wave to pass. And then the next day, the same story. You ask them to brush their teeth again, they refuse or ignore, you push hard, their child explodes, and you back to square one. And that's because you never address the root cause of the behavior. And this is one of my favorite quotes by Dr. Ross Green. "Kids do well if they can, when they don't, something stands in their way." And now you know what those things are. Those are the skills that they're struggling with and the problems that they have with our expectations, with those tasks and activities that we've been asking them to do. So now you know what behavior is, and you know what caused the meltdowns. You know now about the skills, and you know about the problems, and you know about your expectations and the power struggles caused by those expectations. So now let's have a look, what can we actually do about those behaviors? And your first step is you need to stop focusing on behavior. And I know that this can be counterintuitive for a lot of us parents, because for years and years we've always focused on behavior. But we need to change lenses. Kids do well if they can, know when they want to, if they can. So we need to really believe this. And we have to understand that children are not manipulative, are not limited, they're not lazy. Underneath the behavior, always, there is something going on. There is always the skill that your child is struggling with. There is always the problem that needs solved. There is always a demand, the expectation that exceeds your child's capacity to handle it. So we need to change our lenses. Focusing on behavior means that we are always late because you're just waiting for that stress response to do something, and that's too late. Because when your child is already in the meltdown, their thinking brain is shut down. They cannot process language. They cannot do anything to make it better, but to actually go through it. And it takes at least 25 minutes for that meltdown to pass. So you want to be early. You want to identify those expectations, those task activities, transitions, and other children's and situations that cause those behaviors and address them proactively before the meltdowns happen. Don't wait for the meltdown. Be early. And focusing on behaviors means that your child's self-esteem really suffers because our neurodivergent children receive up to 20,000 more negative comments than their neurotypical friends. So what does this do to their self-esteem, to their resilience? Not surprising, they're just given up on life. Step number 2, be proactive. As I said, we need to stop addressing behavior when your child is dysregulated. That's too late. You need to get ahead of behavior. Write them down. What are the same fires you try to put down over and over again? And don't keep that in your head. Write them down on the paper. Address one at the time, because if you try to solve all the problems at once, will feel like juggling 10 plates up in the air at the same time. At some point, something is going to fall on top of your head. So write it down, all the expectations, all the tasks, routines, activities that your child's struggling with, and pick the one that causes the most difficulty for your child and your family. And address those difficulties proactively. When you and your child are both calm, regulated, and happy, that's when you say to them, hey, I notice you have difficulty brushing your teeth. Hey, I notice you have difficulty getting ready in the morning. Hey, I notice you have difficulty eating your breakfast before school. That's when the magic happens. And step 3 is be collaborative. I know we've been told for years and years to have all the answers and to solve all the problems for our kids. But that means that our solutions are uninformed because we don't actually know what's hard for our children. We are just guessing. It's just like throwing spaghetti up the wall. And you are not an expert in what's hard for your child. Your child is an expert in what's hard for them. And there are so many ways to encourage talking. Use declarative language. I notice, I wonder, and make sure you choose the right time. First of all, when the child is regulated, not when they engross in the activity that they enjoy doing. That's not a good time. Perhaps on a drive to the club or drive back from school would be a good time. Perhaps before bed when you're both snuggling in. Those would be the good times to take up that conversation. And through that collaborative problem solving, your child develops the skills they need to face the problems and frustration adaptively, to be able to talk about what's hard for them, to take other person's perspective into account. And when you really understand what's hard for your child, and trust me, I've worked with so many families, and there's not been the time the mom or dad would say, oh, I didn't know this. Because every little piece of information we get from our children is gold. And when you have that information, the solutions that you come up with are informed and long lasting. And here is another quote by Dr. Ross Green. Behavior is the end of the story. Unsolved problems, so those expectations, tasks, activities, routines, transitions, and skills are at the beginning of the story. Work at the beginning to change the end. And are you ready to change the end of your child's story? If you are, Make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification button. Ask questions in the comments. I'm here to help you every step on the way.